Sharing our stories makes us stronger and brings us closer together. So, here's to the strong women. May we know them, the podcast. I'm your host, Megan Lucas. I'm a coach, a published author, and a speaker, but more so I like to create spaces for the messy parts of our stories to be celebrated and supported, because we are stronger together. Today, our guest Lauren shares about how life will keep delivering lessons telling you need to change direction until you listen, and how steps in the next direction can be figured out one at a time.
All right, welcome everyone. My name is Megan Lucas. This is the May We Know Them podcast. Thank you for being here with us. We are recording this live. If you are hearing this live, you're awesome. You're in the party. You came to the right place. If you're catching the recording, you listen to this is also appreciated and important. So what I ask anyone to do whenever they're listening to one of these episodes is to have a pen and paper nearby and write down anything that jumps out at you, whether it's something our guest Lauren, who's here with us this evening, something she says that you resonate with, that has you nodding your head like, yes, I was thinking the same thing. Thanks for saying so. Oh my goodness, let's be best friends. Like, great. If she says something that maybe gets you curious, like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Or even if it rubs you the wrong way, trust you were meant to hear it today. Wherever you are, at whatever point in your life you are hearing this conversation. I'm so excited to have Lauren as a guest this evening to share. She's going to share a little bit about a breakthrough in her life that's led her to just a lot more peace and fun and time and less stress, which, hi, who doesn't want that? So, like, take copious notes. Lauren is, she's a wonderful coach. She's a wonderful human being. When I experience Lauren, like, and I watch like how she shows up in the world and the things that she does, there's such a delight in the way she talks about things, hard things. I'm like, oh, I could talk to her about anything that's difficult. And there's just like a buoyancy to it, or just like, oh yeah, let's lean in. That doesn't feel heavy. Even though it's important stuff that she brings to the table. So I'm excited for you to be here in that energy with her today. I'm like super excited to just have a conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun. So with that, Lauren, hi, welcome.
Hi, what a warm welcome. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. So this evening, we're going to be talking a little bit about a lot about your transition from years and years and years working in the corporate world to not to something different, and the process in walking away from that whole chapter of your life, perhaps the messy process, like what was required to do so. So as we dive in here, I'd love for you to set the stage for us in terms of what was going on in your life at that time before you made this decision to shift things.
Sure. So I spent a little bit more than 20 years in my corporate life. And when I first, I think like most people, when you become some version of adult, you just go get a job. And I did that a couple of times. And then I fell into the HR career, human resources, and I loved it for 15 years. I loved it. I worked really hard. I felt like the work was really rewarding. During the time that I was working in HR, I also got sick. I have a bunch of chronic illnesses, and I like powered through and was real proud of myself for that. In retrospect, I have some other thoughts, but while I was doing it, I was just like being the best leader, worker I could possibly be. And about 15 years into my human resources career, I was working 80 plus hours a week. I was interim managing whatever department needed me. I was in every project. I was invited to every meeting. And the shift was that where it used to be exciting and dynamic and flattering, and like I was honored to be in every room, I had made this shift to like, what? Why do I have to be in this room? Why do they need me? Why isn't there anybody else who can do this? And I started resenting my own career. And I still spent more time there before I got to the point where I even began to think about something else.
Yeah. Yeah. As somebody who's walked a similar path, leaving behind a career, I know that feeling. There's that like excitement, like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. Pick me. Pick me. You didn't pick me. I volunteered myself. Like, yes, I'm here. Hi, Then it turned into, oh, she's got it. We don't have to worry about that. She's got it. She's got it. And it became expected.
Yes. Absolutely. It became an absolute automation.
Mm-hmm.
That anything that didn't have a place to go went to Lauren. And it's how I ended up managing a meeting planning and conference planning department as an HR person, because nobody knew where to put the department. And we didn't have the right people in the right places in the departments it might have fit into. And so I just took it on. Sure. I am a proud recovering member of the How Hard Can It Be Club.
Yep. Yep. I think I have that club card somewhere. Yeah. For sure. For sure. Yeah. And at a certain point, it gets to that point where like, why me?
Mm-hmm.
Why me? Why can't someone else do it? And that resentment builds. And for me, the big pill to swallow was like, oh, I trained everyone that it would be me. That's on me. I trained everyone that it would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha. So the shift happened where we're no longer excited about our job. Okay, I got that. So from there, like, how long did you sit in that uncomfortable place?
I sat in that place for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of anything else to do. I'd created this HR career and I'd climbed a ladder and I'd gotten the job and the title and the money. And I started looking at other HR jobs because that's what I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them looked any more exciting than what I was already doing. And I had this warped sense of thinking that at least here, if I need to go to the dentist, nobody's going to question my commitment. If I have to take time off to take care of a family member, nobody's going to worry about me coming back. I didn't take that time off. Mm-hmm. I was in the dentist chair with my phone above my head while the dentist was, turned away so that I could make sure I didn't miss anything. And I didn't take time off. Even I went to help my family members when they had surgery, and I worked from my childhood bedroom because in a time when people weren't really working from home, because I couldn't miss anything. I didn't have the time to take the time. And so I started actually interviewing for other HR jobs. And I interviewed for one job in particular that was going to be another vice president of HR job. It was reporting into a senior vice president who would be retiring in 7 to 9 years. And the plan was that they would develop me to take over his role. And then I would report to the president of this 2,000 person organization. Well, I wasn't willing to wait for that. And the person who interviewed me knew I wasn't willing to wait for that. And the bank was this like very stuffy, if you know me at all, I'm super casual. I wear soft pants and I would have to go back to wearing a suit. And we all knew this wasn't the right fit. And then I know we'll dive into this a little bit, but then a month later, after I didn't get this job that I didn't want, I had an accident that changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah, which we can dive into now. That might be the perfect segue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after I had this interview, I decided I'm going to make everything perfect because that is a perfectionist's MO. I'm going to make the rest of my life perfect around me. And then I'm going to go and figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And it's not going to be HR in the way I've had HR jobs. Maybe it'll be a communications job. Maybe I'll do consulting. But something had to change and I needed to figure out the rest of my life first. So I actually took off that late December. We always closed our office between Christmas and New Year's. And I always worked because that was a great time for me to catch up when nobody would be bothering me. But this time I actually took off and I cleaned from top to bottom my apartment. I got rid of things. I threw things out. I cleaned the baseboards. I organized my underwear by color. Like everything was in amazing order. And early January, we were working from home because it was a snowy day and we had just gotten everybody laptops in the office for efficiency. So I had a laptop and I could work from home, and I was running my Roomba vacuum, and I saw it going for the last item that I needed to donate, which was the glass lamp. And the lamp was unplugged. The cord was on the floor and the Roomba was going for the cord. So I jumped up, I ran across the room to catch it. I transitioned from carpet to wood floor in socks. And I slid forward, lost control, tried to catch a dining room table that I wasn't close enough to, and landed face first on the wood floor. And the Roomba did its job, sensed the plug, and turned around. So it did not catch this lamp with glass shattering everywhere. The story I had made up that was going to happen never happened.
Yeah.
And I sat up and I thought, whew, that was close. And then I couldn't stand up because my arms didn't work. So I'm not quite sure how I sat up, but I couldn't stand. And I got myself over to my phone and got the phone to drop into my hands from the couch and called a friend who lives in my building and has my key. And she came over and we ended up calling an ambulance, and to the hospital we went, and it turned out I had broken both of my shoulders. And that led to several months. I was in the hospital for a few days, and then I was in rehab centers because my dog does not take good care of me and she does not feed me. So I had to live where somebody could take care of me.
Yeah.
When your arms don't work, when your shoulders don't work, you can't feed yourself. You can't go to the bathroom by yourself. So I went from this super independent, I do everything by myself, I don't need anyone's darned help, to, can somebody please scratch my eyebrow?
Yeah.
Right. And the first joke from my friends and family was, oh, look, who can't be a hand raiser anymore.
Funny, not funny, funny later, maybe. Yeah.
If you know me, you know, I thrive on humor. So all of the like high five jokes and the any kind of joke about shoulders, arms, or hands was funny for me. But I lived for several months in double slings and recovering from a really devastating accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that just like the physical limitations and the pain, like all of that. But yeah, to go from being the one, you know, and taking care of everything and anything for anyone, whether they've asked it, expected it or not, to needing that kind of care for yourself.
It was very humbling.
Yeah.
It felt humiliating.
Sure.
My inner perfectionist was so pleased that my apartment was in order.
Hold on to the little things. Yeah.
I know. My perfectionist was also a little bit pleased in a very sick way that both shoulders were broken in the same spots, 2 breaks each side. Symmetry is lovely.
Yeah.
Those were the positives. But the healing was slow. I live with a bunch of chronic illnesses, and so I have some connective tissue stuff and some muscular stuff. So besides the healing being slow because I broke both of my shoulders and I had to start using them before they were ready to really be used so that I could recover and get home, I had all of these extra delays. So I had to learn to be patient. I had to learn to like temper how frustrated I would allow myself to get with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn to rely on friends and family. There's somebody in the audience with us tonight who fed me a banana and a Diet Coke the day after I broke my shoulders. And it was just really so touching for me to have friends and family, coworkers, people from college, like just came out of the woodwork to help or cheer me on or call me. And I had never realized how loved I was. I knew I put a lot out into the world. As much as I was a workaholic, I was also a helperaholic. So whatever you needed, I would help with. And then you would ask me what I needed, and like probably nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I felt like it was my job to be self-sufficient so that I could be helpful to others. And that was how I treated myself. So here I was with 2 broken shoulders and jokes about not being a hand raiser. And I promised myself that when I went back to work, I would not work 80 hours a week anymore. I would change my life. I would figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. Everything would be better and it would all be perfect. Which, if you can hear from the tone of my voice, is not how it turned out.
Yeah. You know, I want to pause for a second. That piece you said about how I resonate with the helperholic for sure. I know people who listen to this podcast and follow me, like, definitely we're similar, very similar. And sometimes that question of, you know, what do you need? I think sometimes it's hard to answer that, not because we don't want to be a burden and put our needs on other people, but sometimes we're so disconnected from it. We're so focused outward, so worried about everyone else, or like paying attention to everyone else's needs, that we don't even know what we need. It's kind of a really weird, disconnected place to be.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, I mean, to actually physically have to be still and present with that is also like a whole new learning of yourself.
Yes. And as I was healing and becoming more independent and people were offering help or visits, I shifted back to, oh no, you don't have to. And nobody was doing anything because they had to. Like, I was in rehabilitative care. There were people who could do these things for me. People wanted to help. And it took a long time. And it's still something that I struggle with a little bit, that it takes me a long time to trust that people are sincere when they say they want to help. And I have like my people, you know, who are my close group of people who I know mean it. But when somebody new comes into my life and I am getting to know them and we're building sort of intimacy in our friendship or relationship, there's still a tendency for me to say, like, but how can I help you? And to sort of try to keep score in my head to make sure that I'm serving them more than I'm needing them.
Yeah. I hear you in that for sure. Okay, so talk to us about this. I hear the grand plan for whenever you return to work for how it's going to go.
Yes.
And I can hear the foreshadowing that it did not go according to plan. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. When you have a goal and you don't set any plans to go along with it, it becomes just a wish. And so that's what it was. I went back to work. I went back to the office. 4 people had taken over pieces of my job while I was out. And it was only about half of my job that was taken over. So that should have informed me that I had too much work on my plate. But it didn't. Instead, I got to feel guilty that 4 people had taken on my work instead of just feeling guilty about 1. And so as quickly as I could, I had to transition back to work because I was still building up my arms. And when you work on a computer, you really have to build up that endurance. So I was limited initially to working 2 or 3 hours a day. Of course, I exceeded that a little bit every day, got back to 40 hours a week in about a month, and got back to 80 hours a week in 2 months. And work was all I could do because I was still recovering. I was still exhausted. And we needed an interim this and an interim that and this big project. And so I just kept saying yes. I took everything on. And I was disappointed in myself. I was angry that I couldn't figure out another way. And I thought, okay, this is just how things are. This is the best I get. I can go do this somewhere else and work 80 hours a week somewhere else, or I can stay where I know. And, you know, this is it and it'll be fine. And it wasn't. I was really miserable. And I was back to not having time to hang out with friends, not having time to myself, not having time to think about what I had wanted to do outside of work. And then the pandemic started. And as it was for a lot of people, something switched in my head. And HR was the place where pandemic information was coming through. And our CEO came to me when they thought the governor was maybe going to close down offices for 2 weeks. And he said to me, "What do you think we should do?" And my brain went, "I don't effing know. And I can't answer any more questions. I am broken. Like, I don't have it in me." Out loud, of course, I said, "Well, I think the whole leadership team should get together and talk about this. I don't think this should be my decision or my recommendation. I'll bring you all the information I know." Right. I turned right back into it. But I realized I couldn't live like that. And we all, of course, went home. We all started using Zoom for the first time for a lot of us. And I joined a Zoom group of HR people from around the world who were all in burnout, who were all tired from this pandemic. And the difference was I was the only one who'd been working like this all along. So where I worked 80 plus hours a week, other people were like, "Oh my gosh, I only work 60. Like I was the sort of hero and tragic one of the group, that I was working harder than everybody else. And at the time when we were all so new to Zoom, we only looked at ourselves in the frame, right? Like we were watching ourselves be on camera. And I remember my skin was kind of gray and I just looked so tired and so unhappy. And I realized, and I still have that image in my head because I feel for that version of myself. And I realized I couldn't do this way anymore. And the universe just kept throwing things at me, right? It threw me down on the ground. I don't think it did so maliciously. I think I fell, and the lesson was from the universe, but I got thrown down on the ground. I literally could no longer be a hand raiser. And I was like, climbing up this mountain that nobody was asking me to climb up and saying like, "I'm coming right back, everybody," like my own little hero's journey that nobody was asking me for.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it. I really didn't want it anymore. And a coach who I knew, who you also know, had posted on Facebook that she'd just become certified. And I realized that sounded interesting to me. And I thought, well, do I have time to add that to my plate? Let me find out. And I called on her and I asked her all the logistical questions. How do I do it? And how did you do it? And how did you choose a program? And how much did it cost? And how much time was it? And then I said, I don't know how I'm going to fit this in because I already work so many hours per week. And, it sounds like it's a few hours per month and a weekend per month. And I don't know, my work hours aren't going to change. And she said, "If you say so." And all of my insides boiled because I'd been coaching on the side for years and I had said that to other people. And B, I couldn't imagine it applied to me. And my first thought was, you don't understand.
Yeah.
And of course she did understand. She was coming in from a totally non-judgmental, you get to decide kind of place. And that was the moment. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but that was the moment that I realized I was ready for something different.
Yeah. What a moment of almost rude reflection. Where you have to actually look at yourself and be like, "Oh, yeah. What a powerful moment."
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what you just said is important too. Not knowing what was coming next, like that vision not clear.
Not only was that vision not clear, but as somebody who could figure out how to run marketing and finance and, name the department, and being, I'd like to say, the president of the How Hard Could It Be Club, to not know how to manage me made it feel like I was unmanageable. I was unfigureoutable. Like, I'm smart and I help other people with this stuff for a living. And I have a side gig where I coach people and I help them figure out who they want to be when they grow up. Like, it's just not in the cards for me. Like, it's real nice that this coach wants to help me, but good luck to her. Right? Because I'm not really fixable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I was starting from when on that phone call, I asked her if I could be her client.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't fast and it wasn't easy. And I'm still a work in progress, and I'm grateful for the progress. But in less than a year, I went from working 80 hours a week to working 40 hours a week. I enrolled in a certification program. I figured out that I wanted to own my own business. And I went from a goal of 5 years to a year. And in 3 months, I gave 3 months notice. So I did it in 6 months. And that's sort of the, like, you know, if you remember Seinfeld, it's like the yada, yada, yada part of the story where, you know, all the blanks get filled in and I make it seem so easy. But it was a lot of really worthwhile, incredibly hard and rewarding and scary work to get to where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for saying so. I think that's one thing I want anybody who listens to this podcast to walk away with is like, it's a really brave, like having that aha moment, that breakthrough is dramatic and life-changing and doesn't mean anything if you don't take action from it.
Right.
And the action you take is not easy. It might have a different energy because suddenly there's like something has broken or something's aligned or like there's some kind of clarity. Maybe it's a little murky, but you just know this direction, not that way. Like you just start moving. And you know, that clarity will come. Like for you, like that clarity came like, oh, I want to own my own business. But it only comes if you continue to keep showing up for it. So yeah, it's a brave journey.
Thank you.
It's a really brave thing and not easy and definitely messy. Especially stepping into entrepreneurship, which it's like a whole other level of like a personal growth gauntlet.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for saying so. What, if any, advice would you give to somebody who's maybe sitting here nodding along, being like, oh shit, she's talking to me. Like this is exactly how I feel right now. Like, you know, any words of wisdom you could give to somebody who's kind of having this aha moment and is on the teetering edge of like, okay, what action do I take, if any, here?
Yeah, bunches.
Yeah. Okay.
The first thing is to know that you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I talked to my first coach and revealed that I didn't know how to do this, I thought, I must be the only one who's ever told her this, right? It's sort of a hero complex, sort of a martyr complex, and it's sort of a I'm the weird one complex, because everybody makes hard look easy, right? Except for your closest people. And the people who make hard look hard typically are people that you think that you're not like, right? If they're saying it out loud, you think, oh, I'm not like them. It can't be as hard for me as it must be for them. So that's the first thing, is you're not alone. Every client I have had has like whispered to me on our strategy call what they're afraid to say out loud. And I tell them it's normal, and me too, and my other clients too. And there's like relief and often tears for very tough women who are not used to expressing themselves that way, to find out that they're not the only one. So that's the very first thing, is that we make it lonely because we think we're alone in it. The second thing is, once you figure out you're not alone, then don't try to fix it alone. You can read all the books and go to all the trainings and talk to your friend who did it and talk to your friend who didn't do it and talk to your partner. And everybody is going to want to keep you safe. And these are probably going to be people who you haven't talked to about how hard it actually is. So they're going to say, well, can you just work less, or can you just put in a little less effort, and you don't know how, because that's not your way. Your 80% days are everybody else's 120% days. So when you're a high achiever and a workaholic and a people pleaser and you don't have good boundaries, like however you describe yourself, those words are words in the dictionary for a reason. There are many of us out there. And so whether you start with books or workshops or trainings, which does work for some people, or whether you actually like go and hire yourself a coach, which is what I did and what I really recommend for especially high achieving women. If you do it by yourself, you can't see what needs to happen. It's very hard to look at yourself objectively, especially when it's so easy for you to look at other people objectively, because you assume you should be able to, right? We should ourselves all the time. And so those are my pieces of advice. Don't do it alone. And don't think you're alone. You have to start embracing community and advice and support for yourself. And you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it little by little. Like my first step was going to this just group of women in HR. That was the first light bulb for me. And then talking to somebody and realizing that there was one person, which turned into several people. There was one person who I felt like understood me and who I could start opening up to, that who wasn't my friend who wanted to protect me. And so it's just a matter of starting, like have a first conversation with a coach, or have a first conversation with a mentor, or even your own boss, and then do something, even if it's just, looking into it and backing off, and then looking into it later, because you will hit this breaking point, right? I hit a couple of really hard breaking points, and they just kept coming at me until I listened. But you will hit these breaking points. And unfortunately, and you and I were talking about this before we started the episode, you have to be in enough pain in order to make a change. And it's hard to know when it's enough pain, right? I don't know if you've ever heard the analogy of the frog in the boiling pot of water.
Well, share it with us in case.
Yeah, they say if you throw a frog into a boiling pot of water, it will jump out because it will be shocked by the boiling water and it will not want to be in there. If you place a frog in tepid water and you heat the water up, it will think, oh, this is a nice bath. And then at some point it will be boiled. And I think that's how our careers go.
Yeah.
Is we get a little bit of extra work. We get a little bit of some insulting feedback from a manager. We are in a toxic workplace that grows more toxic. We start to believe in ourselves a little bit less and a little bit less. We start to feel lucky for the job we already have and worried that we can't have something else. And so the pot is boiling, it's starting to boil, but we're already in it.
Yeah.
If I walked into a workplace on my first day of work and my new boss punched me in the nose, I would leave. But that's not how it happens. You walk in on the first day, you're excited about the work, you're excited about the team, people are nice, and the buildup of toxicity or too much work or too many expectations or a bad boss or whatever it is that surrounds you is a slow build. So you don't notice it until you hit that breaking point. And we have to feel like we're in enough pain before we make a change. And that's the unfortunate cycle. The way to stay ahead of it is to get a coach early on, have advisors and mentors and people you trust who are constructive people, not toxically positive people. That's different, but constructive people, not commiserators. Have those people around you. Have people around you who you admire and who admire you, so that you're somewhere in the middle of this stream of people who are bringing you up.
Yeah, it's more than just venting, right? Which I think maybe I've definitely had crews of people where we just vented, but then nobody felt better.
Right.
You know, there was no action taken. So yeah, somebody who will support you and stand for you and reflect to you, or just say back to you the things that you're saying that maybe you'll hear differently once you hear them back through your ears, like out your mouth in your ears. Yeah, I mean, I think everything you just shared about how, like, the slow boil, you know, we can apply that in so many situations, relationships, work environments, just like, I mean, where you live sometimes, like, like just really, and you can start to excuse it as normal. Like it grows on you, even though you know it's not a good thing. You just kind of get used to it. And to have somebody who can hold the mirror, or similar to that Zoom meeting, Lauren, where like you're actually able to see yourself. You're like, oh, how'd I get here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, those are important people. You can't see the whole picture when you're actually the one inside the frame. So having somebody who can hold that mirror to reflect, I think is really, really powerful. Yeah, gosh, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
all. I want to give the people who have joined us live here today, I want to give them the opportunity to jump in.
I think that the point that resonated with me was when Lauren talked about the shift. And I was just thinking about my, it kind of jumped at me because I can remember specifically in my previous job where, again, it was another morning. Every morning I was getting up at 3 o'clock so I could be at my desk upstairs at 4. And I would still be working at 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. because my boss was in Vancouver. The gentleman that worked for me was in India. So I was trying to, cover all, time zones. And so I was like, and working Saturday and Sunday because I was trying to get caught up
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that the week was going to be really long because it was just a really long day. And at one moment I came down my stairs into my kitchen. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do it. And I didn't know what to do. I was scared because it's kind of like you were saying about the frog in the pot. I've been sitting there and it's been getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And then I was just like, oh my God, I need to get out. I don't know what to do. It's too hot. I can't jump up because I just can't jump. And and I didn't know what to do. And so yeah, reached out and got helpful advice and wrote my notes as to what I was going to say to my boss and he said either I was going to become part-time or retire. And that was probably the most difficult conversation I've ever had. And my boss really didn't say anything except turned her camera off so I couldn't see her. and a couple of months later, I ended up resigning, and I because I got an offer for a job that I really like, and it's an individual contributor. It's U.S. based. It's something I love. It's it's all numbers based, and I work from home, and they're very flexible with my time, and so I would. Now I'm very cautious about as soon as the pot starts to get hot, I either back off or, I'll just leave.
Yeah,
So.
you have some lived experience that's taught you to pay attention to that. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I mean, I hear I think this is for anyone who's in the pot. There comes a point where you have to have a hard, brave conversation. And it may be messy and kind of not how you want it to go, especially if you've given a lot of time and energy and like more and than you had to give. It can be really hurtful, and it doesn't mean don't have the conversation. It doesn't mean having the conversation was the wrong move. Like there are things that will happen as a result of that. But yeah, choosing to do so is brave. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
believing in yourself enough to make those choices, getting the support you need to help verify that the choices you want to make are valid choices and healthy choices is so important and so freaking powerful to actually take control and say, like, this is not what I want.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think part of that support, when you reach out for support like that, when you're about to do something like that, have a hard conversation, draw a line in the sand, having people around you to remind you of who you are and what you're capable of. Like, sure, you want to hear everything's going to be okay. It's like, and like, but even if it's not, even if it doesn't go the way you want it to go, you're going to be more than fine. You know, having people remind you of that and who will be there by you as you're figuring it out it's important. Yeah, it's important for sure.
I think the other thing that we forget a lot is that we always have a next choice. Sometimes we think if I leave this job and the next job is terrible, well, then I'm stuck there. I'm stuck in that. So I may as well stay here. I may as well not move at all. But something that I work on with my clients a lot is you're only making the next decision. You don't have to make all of the decisions. You're not choosing your next company or your next job or your next career for the rest of your life. You're just choosing it next. And then you get to choose again. Do I want to keep doing this, or is there something else in my future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That can keep you from being overwhelmed and then not taking any action or making any decisions. Yeah. Just the next choice. Well, with that, Lauren, I mean, we've talked about support here. Is there anyone in particular you want to shout out who we should just have on our radar, people we should follow, groups we should check out, just things we should know?
I think the answer to that is going to be different for a lot of people. You know, I love the Brene Browns and the Simon Sinek and Adam Grant, all of those positive psychology, the psychology of work kind of people, but they can feel a little bit out of reach. So I love to find people on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn who speak positively about looking out for yourself. And I think you do that. I do that. And I think there are a lot of wonderful coaches out there and advisors and therapists who talk about autonomy as an adult, which we don't really get taught. Once we're grown up, we're taught you go to work, you do your work, and then you go to another job if something needs to change. And so I think there are great lessons and a great opportunity to unfollow and block anybody who doesn't bring you that joy, because social media can also be super toxic. And I think, you know, look at different books. There are a couple of books for me that were absolutely life-changing. One of those books was Brene Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection, which, funny enough, the first time I read it for a client, and we talked about how it applied to her. And then I read it a few years later when I was in a different state of mind, and I was like, oh, this applies to me. That's so funny. She wrote this book for me, and I didn't even notice. The other book that really changed my perspective was actually about negotiation. It's called Never Split the Difference. And the author is a former CIA hostage negotiator, FBI hostage negotiator. And he talks about how to negotiate so that you're not ending in a compromise that nobody's happy with. And my MO had always been like, I don't have to be that happy. If the other person's more happy and I'm not damaged, we're probably okay. And what I realized is that in a lot of situations, first of all, you get to ask for what you want and need.
Yes.
And if that doesn't work for the other party, then maybe it doesn't work. You don't have to find a compromise. You don't have to find something that works for everybody that doesn't actually work for anybody. And secondly, that there are opportunities all over the place. And if you don't ask for those opportunities, then they don't exist. And when I left my corporate job on my way out, I gave my notice And I gave a generous notice. And then my boss asked me for some more time. And I agreed to that time if he would agree to sponsor some clients, which felt very brave and audacious for me to ask. And he said yes. So I left my corporate job with some clients in hand, which was really cool. So learning to negotiate, learning to look at myself as not the exception felt really powerful.
When Lauren was talking about waking up, that morning wake up of, I can't do this anymore. I had that exact wake up. It was I can't do this anymore. I can't do anything but cry. I certainly cannot form a coherent sentence. I was able to text a friend to say, just call my mom and tell her I'm okay, but I can't talk. And it was that moments of, I can't do this anymore, but I've got to figure out what I'm going to do, but it's not going to be what I was doing because I can't do that anymore. And, you just hit a point and went, I very much felt like I was being taken advantage of. More and more stuff was being put on me, and less stuff was being acknowledged, appreciated, whatever. And when I hit that point, I was like, all right, stand up, pull up your bootstraps. Which way are you going to head? That's a different direction that you were heading in. And what are those first steps that you're going to take to get there? And, that happened to be over a weekend. So I had it was like a Saturday morning. So I had through Sunday and then to Monday to figure out what I was going to do and to get all the pieces in place. And, it was one of those, like, I was not going to keep doing what I was doing because I couldn't do it anymore. I wasn't quite sure where I was heading, but I knew it had to be someplace else in some other direction. And I had figured out how to start heading in that direction, but I wasn't sure where I was going to end up either. But you had to be okay with so much of the unknown. And ultimately, like, I would certainly not say that it was anywhere in the forefront of my mind, but it was certainly one of those, I got to take care of me. Because if I can't take care of me, I can't take care of the people around me. And keeping in the same place with the same toxic, stressful environment was certainly not the way to take care of me or anybody else. And so that I can't do this anymore wake up, when you were talking about that, was very like, been there, done that. I remember that moment very, very clearly, and just kind of took it from there. And when you were talking about just having to make that change, it was definitely something's got to change now, and I've got to make it happen to take care of me.
I think any account we can get from people where they share, they have that aha moment, and then just decide to move forward in any direction other than the one where you were at, not having it all figured out, but just knowing it's what you said, Lauren, the next step, the next choice, just get moving. It'll come.
You talked about, I can't do this anymore as step one. And then I don't know what I'm going to do. And then this is what I'm going to go after. I think so often we are stuck in the I don't want this anymore phase. So we just go for something else. And we keep repeating the same patterns over and over. So taking that time to really figure out what we don't want anymore, and then pause, and then figure out what we do want, makes it so we're going for something instead of just escaping something.
Which is a different experience, and a true, like a transformed experience. So you're not repeating the same behavior at the next job or whatever, right. The next relationship, the next whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Lauren, thanks so much for just sharing so much of yourself and your journey in this episode today. I think so many people will resonate in one way or another, whether it's career, relationship, you could have a whole list. I know you have, because you've walked the walk and you're still walking the walk, that you have resources to support people. You and I were talking, you have a checklist for people to kind of check in and see if they're really fine. I'm using air quotes for our people listening, if they're really fine at whatever situation they're in. So where can we find that?
Yeah. So my tagline is fine as a trap, because fine is the thing we say we are when we're actually not at all fine. And if you go to fineasatrap.com, then you can download that checklist, and it really walks you through how to determine from the different aspects of work, how good, bad, or fine things actually are, and really come out with an evaluation of how work is going for you. And it helps you figure out that first step of what do you not want anymore.
Yeah. We'll have that linked. We're going to link the books you recommended. If there's any accounts you think we should follow, we will give the goods. Like, we're going to link that so that people have resources to help them move forward or check in or whatever it is they need in this moment. So thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate this conversation. Thank you to our guests who hopped on live tonight and jumped in and participated. How fun is that, and scary and all the things. I appreciate
So
you.
much fun.
Yeah, cut it off mute. For our listeners, sit with whatever you took away from this conversation. Something you heard today might come back in 2 weeks, might come back in a month. Like, just, trust that you were here listening through this whole thing for a reason, and we appreciate it so much. Stay tuned. We will have more episodes coming. Thank you again, Lauren.
Thank you so much.